All right, get ready, because today we're taking a deep dive into shipping documentation.
Sounds thrilling, right?
Yeah, especially bills of lading.
The unsung heroes of international trade.
That's right, those crucial documents that keep global commerce flowing.
And we've got a great source to guide us.
We're diving into Alborz Payvandi's book, Scenario-Based Manual for Export Documentation in Shipping.
Specifically, an excerpt that focuses on BL issuance.
It's amazing how much goes on behind the scenes to get products from point A to point B.
It's a whole hidden world, and understanding bills of lading is like unlocking a secret level of knowledge.
Whether you're in international trade or just curious about logistics.
This deep dive is for you.
So what exactly is a bill of lading?
Think of it as a passport for your goods. It's a legal contract between the shipper and the carrier.
Okay, so it's legally binding.
Absolutely, and it acts as a receipt for the goods, proof of carriage.
And even a document of title that can be transferred.
You got it, but just like a passport.
Any errors or discrepancies can cause major issues?
Delays, disputes, even legal problems.
Now that's serious stuff.
Payvandi highlights some scenarios where issuing a BL can be especially risky.
Almost like red flags waving in the shipping lane.
One that stands out is issuing a BL after the vessel has already departed.
You'd think the paperwork should be done before the ship sets sail.
In most cases it is, but there are exceptions.
And those exceptions require some serious attention to detail.
And communication. Lots of communication.
So let's break it down. If I'm responsible for issuing the BL in that kind of scenario, what are the crucial steps I need to take?
First and foremost, accuracy. You need to triple check every detail on the BL against the client's instructions.
Names, addresses, cargo descriptions.
Container numbers, seal numbers, everything.
It all needs to match perfectly with what's actually on the ship.
If something's off, even a tiny error,
that could lead to a logistical nightmare.
Imagine the BL says 1,000 units, but only 950 were loaded.
Because of last-minute change. Chaos at the destination port.
The consignee receives the shipment, finds a discrepancy.
Delays in customs clearance, storage fees, frustration all around.
Not a good situation for anyone involved.
So accuracy is key. What else should I be laser focused on in this post-departure scenario?
Documentation, gather all your supporting evidence.
Commercial invoices, packing lists, export declarations.
Any certificates or permits required by customs or the shipping line.
It's like building a case file to ensure smooth sailing.
Exactly. And what about the financial side of things?
Do I need to worry about payments at this stage?
Absolutely. Before you even think about releasing the BL.
You need to confirm that all charges related to the shipment have been settled.
Freight fees, handling charges, terminal fees, customs duties, everything.
Like making sure everyone gets their cut before the final curtain call.
Perfect analogy. Now you're ready to prepare and issue that original BL.
And how many original copies are usually needed?
It depends on the agreement, but usually 2 or 3.
So it's not just a single document.
Note it's a set of VIP passes to get those goods moving.
And sometimes you need those passes delivered electronically for speed.
You're talking about a telex release.
Right, an electronic release of the BL.
Allows for much faster cargo release at the destination port.
Because the physical documents don't need to catch up.
Especially helpful for time-sensitive shipments.
It's like hitting the fast-forward button on the delivery process.
Precisely, but even with a telex release.
The story doesn't end there.
You need to keep both the shipper and the consignee in the loop.
Communicate clearly throughout the whole process.
Let them know when the BL is issued, how to access it.
And inform them of any potential delays or changes.
Transparency is key. Nobody likes surprises when it comes to valuable cargo.
What about after the goods are delivered?
Does the BL just fade into the background at that point? Not quite. It's crucial to keep copies of the BL and all those supporting documents for your records.
What is that?
They can be vital for audits, compliance checks.
Or even resolving disputes down the road. So even the best detectives keep detailed records of their cases.
Exactly. And speaking of being a good detective...
What else is crucial for ensuring a smooth journey for these BLs and the precious cargo they represent?
Proactive follow-up. Don't just issue the BL and forget about it.
Right. Got to stay on top of things.
Check the shipment status, address any concerns the consignee might have.
Make sure everything is moving along as planned.
And never stop learning.
What do you mean?
Stay up to date on the regulations governing BL issuance and cargo release.
Both in the shipping and destination countries.
International trade laws can change, so continuous learning is a must.
So a good detective is always hitting the books.
Or in this case, the latest trade publications.
What about those who are new to this whole world?
It can seem like a lot to grasp, but that's where training and knowledge sharing are so important.
Payvandi emphasizes regular training for anyone handling BLs.
Whether they're seasoned veterans or just starting out,
The more you know.
the better equipped you are to handle those tricky situations.
And don't forget the feedback loop.
After the shipment is delivered, get feedback from the customer.
So you can identify areas for improvement.
And refine your processes for the future.
Even the best detectives are always striving to improve their methods.
Now let's talk about those red flags, the situations where the export department should hit the brakes.
And not issue the BL.
Sometimes it's not as obvious as you might think.
Like what?
Incomplete or incorrect shipping instructions.
That's setting yourself up for trouble down the line.
If there are any gaps in the information.
Missing details, ambiguities.
It's better to pause and clarify everything before moving forward.
Okay, so clarity is key.
You also need to be on the lookout for discrepancies between the shipping order and the data in your system.
Mismatched consignee details, typos in addresses, errors in contact information.
Those are all red flags.
Like finding inconsistencies in a witness statement.
Something doesn't add up.
You need to investigate further before proceeding.
What about the financial side?
Any red flags related to payment.
Unpaid charges are a major no-go.
So if there are any outstanding fees,
Freight charges, port fees, customs duties. Don't issue that BL until everything is settled.
make sense? The financial books need to be balanced before the cargo can set sail.
What about customs?
Can those also be red flags?
Absolutely. Unresolved customs issues are like roadblocks.
Missing export permits, questions about the origin of the goods, regulatory hurdles.
All of those need to be addressed before you give the shipment the green light.
Customs delays can really throw a wrench in the works.
Now let's talk about the container itself.
Are there any red flags related to that?
If the container hasn't been physically released from the port or pulled by the shipper,
Hold off on issuing that BL,
you need confirmation that the cargo is actually on the move.
not just sitting on a dock.
Also, pay attention to the condition of the container.
What do you mean?
If there are signs of damage, like dents, holes, or broken seals,
That's not good.
it could indicate a security risk or compromise the cargo.
Makes sense. A damaged container is a red flag.
What about the vessel and sailing information?
Any warning signs there?
Unconfirmed vessel or sailing information is another big red flag.
If the vessel hasn't been confirmed or the departure time is still up in the air, it's like booking a flight without knowing the airline or departure time.
You're setting yourself up for potential problems.
So unconfirmed vessel or sailing information is a definite no-go.
Now let's move on to insurance.
Is that important?
It's crucial, especially for valuable or fragile shipments.
So make sure the goods are adequately insured before issuing the BL.
You don't want to be left holding the bag if something happens during transit.
Good point. Can't leave those goods exposed to unnecessary risk.
And what about the shipper themselves?
Are there red flags related to them?
Absolutely. Pay attention to their track record and reputation.
If it's a new client, do your due diligence.
Check their creditworthiness. Make sure they have a history of reliable business practices.
It's like running a background check on a potential business partner.
Trust but verify. Right.
And what about the documents this shipper provides?
If they haven't submitted all the required documents, like commercial invoices, certificates of origin,
Or any special regulatory documents?
hold off on issuing the BL.
It's like trying to bake a cake without all the ingredients.
You might end up with a disaster.
What if the goods themselves don't meet safety standards?
That's a deal breaker.
If the cargo doesn't comply with international safety or shipping regulations,
Issuing the BL could be a recipe for disaster.
we're talking hazardous materials, prohibited goods, products that don't meet quality standards.
Safety and compliance are non-negotiable.
What about financial red flags beyond just unpaid charges?
If there are concerns about the shipper's financial stability or their ability to pay,
Proceed with caution.
you might want to secure payment up front or have a confirmed letter of credit.
Okay, so it's all about mitigating risk.
Protecting your interests.
That's a lot of potential pitfalls.
But it's not all doom and gloom.
Tell me about the green lights.
The situations where you can confidently issue the BL.
Okay, I need some good news.
The first green light is when all of the required information is accurate and complete.
No typos, no missing details, everything lines up.
The second green light is that financial and legal obligations are met.
All charges, tariffs, legal requirements, customs clearance procedures, all sorted out.
Like a clean bill of health.
What about the container itself?
Confirmation of container release is key.
Once you know the container has been released and the cargo is ready,
You can breathe a sigh of relief.
so the cargo's packed, the bills are paid, the paperwork's in order, the container's on the move.
Anything else?
What about the vessel?
Vessel confirmation and sailing date.
Once you have a confirmed vessel and departure date,
You're good to go.
it's like a pre-flight checklist for international shipping.
Making sure all systems are go before takeoff.
But it's a lot to keep track of.
That's why Payvandi emphasizes a crucial document.
The loading list.
It arrives before you issue the BL.
Tell me more about this loading list.
It's a detailed manifest from the Port of Loading representative.
Okay, and what does it do?
It provides a breakdown of every container loaded onto the vessel.
Including their numbers, seals, and contents.
It confirms that everything is in its right place.
So why is it so critical before issuing the BL?
It eliminates the risk of issuing a BL for a container that hasn't actually been loaded.
Like double-checking your boarding pass.
Exactly. It also helps catch any errors or omissions in the documentation.
Before it's too late.
And remember how we talked about the BL being a legal document?
Right, legally binding.
The loading list adds another layer of legal and financial accountability.
If there's ever a dispute about what was shipped.
The loading list proves what was loaded onto the vessel.
Like a time-stamped photograph of the crime scene.
And it can also help assess the condition of the cargo before departure.
So you can address potential issues before the ship sets sail.
It's like a health check for the shipment.
And it helps with customs clearance at the destination port.
Fewer delays, fewer headaches, a happier customer.
So if I were shipping valuable goods,
You definitely want to make sure you have that loading list.
before the BL is issued,
Absolutely.
but it's still a lot to remember.
That's why Payvandi provides some helpful checklists in his book.
Oh, good. I was just thinking I could use a lifeline.
He provides a revised bill of lading telex release checklist.
And a checklist for export documentation before issuing the original BL.
Think of them as your step-by-step guides.
Okay, let's dive into those checklists.
Let's start with the revised bill of lading telex release checklist.
What does it cover?
It helps you double-check all the key information before releasing a revised BL or authorizing a telex release.
So first up is shipper information.
Yes, verify the accuracy of the shipper's name, address, and contact details.
Okay, and then the consignee and notify party.
Exactly. Then you move on to container numbers.
That's where the loading list comes in handy.
Make sure the numbers on the BL match the loading list and the actual containers.
And then the description of goods.
Has to be complete and accurate, the type, quantity, weight, dimensions, markings, every detail.
Got it. No vague descriptions allowed.
Then you need to make sure the shipping instructions are crystal clear.
Special handling, hazardous materials, temperature control, it all needs to be noted correctly.
And then you verify the freight terms.
Prepaid, collect, something else?
Make sure it's clearly indicated on the BL.
So everyone knows who's paying.
Then confirm the shipment date, ports of loading and discharge, place of receipt, place of delivery.
Or mapping out the whole journey.
And don't forget to verify the type of BL.
Direct, express, or something else.
Make sure it's the right one for this shipment.
And then signatures and stamps.
Some BLs require them to be valid.
So we're making it official.
And if we're issuing a telex release,
Make sure the instructions for release are clear and accurate.
you want to avoid any confusion or delays.
Clarity is key, whether it's paper or digital.
Don't forget to confirm that all payments have been received and settled.
Before issuing the BL or authorizing the telex release,
And if you're dealing with special cargo,
like hazardous materials or perishable goods.
verify that any special handling or transport conditions have been met.
Okay, so we're taking extra care with those.
And if insurance is applicable.
Make sure it's included in the shipping costs or arranged separately.
You need to have all required documents attached to the BL.
Customs clearance forms,
Yeah.
export licenses,
Or, in the case of a telex release, sent electronically.
like creating a complete information package.
And finally, the loading list.
That crucial document.
Make sure you've received it, reviewed it, and verified it.
To confirm that all the containers are actually on board the ship, that checklist is so thorough.
It covers every detail.
What about the other checklist, the one for export documentation?
That one's equally important.
What does that one cover?
It focuses on gathering all the necessary paperwork before you even think about the BL.
Okay, walk me through it.
First, document verification.
The commercial invoice, the packing list, the export declaration.
Make sure they're all accurate and complete.
We're laying the groundwork with solid information.
And if any certificates are needed,
Like a certificate of origin.
make sure they've been obtained.
Got it. We're gathering all the credentials.
Then you move on to information accuracy.
What does that involve?
Review the shipping instructions from the shipper. Make sure they're clear and accurate.
Including things like Incoterms.
We'll talk more about those later.
So we're making sure everyone is on the same page.
Then you need to verify the container and seal numbers.
Checking and double checking.
Then payment confirmation.
Got to make sure the money's sorted out.
If you're dealing with a new client or a large shipment, consider securing payment up front or having a confirmed letter of credit.
So we're being extra careful with the financials.
Once you've verified the documents and confirmed payment,
it's time to start the BL issuance process.
Review the draft BL for accuracy, then send it to the shipper for approval.
We're getting their sign-off.
Once the draft is approved, prepare the original BL.
And make sure you're issuing the correct number of original copies.
Don't forget to inform the shipper and consignee that the original BL is ready.
Keep those lines of communication open.
And if a telex release is needed,
follow the correct procedures.
For both the customer and the shipping line.
Accuracy and security are paramount.
Now, before you issue the BL,
make sure you're in compliance with all the relevant shipping regulations.
For both the country of origin and the destination country.
Export controls, import restrictions, permits, licenses.
We don't want any surprises at customs.
And keep copies of everything.
For future reference.
Like an insurance policy.
Do one final verification of all the documentation before issuing the BL.
Make sure everything is perfect.
And after the BL is issued,
set reminders to follow up on the shipment status.
Make sure everything is progressing as planned. Keep everyone informed.
We're not just issuing documents and forgetting about them.
We're actively involved in the process.
These checklists seem incredibly helpful.
They are, and they highlight the importance of being thorough and detail-oriented.
Bills of lading are the backbone of international trade.
And understanding the process is essential for anyone involved in global commerce.
But we've covered a lot of ground today.
And there's still more to explore in this fascinating world.
Welcome back to our deep dive into shipping documentation.
Ready for round 2?
Absolutely. We've learned a lot about bills of lading already.
But there's always more to explore.
We're about to shift our focus from individual documents
to the systems and people behind the scenes.
So we're zooming out to see the bigger picture.
How everything works together in the world of international trade.
And for that,
we're turning to another section from Payvandi's book.
Okay, what does he cover this time?
He outlines a standard operating procedure, or SOP.
An SOP?
For handling export documentation at shipping container lines.
Sounds pretty official.
It's like a roadmap for efficiency and accuracy.
Making sure everyone's on the same page.
And following the same playbook.
So it's not just about handling the paperwork.
It covers everyone involved.
Clerks, supervisors, management, the whole team.
Everyone needs to be rowing in the same direction.
To keep those shipments moving.
And the SOP outlines everyone's responsibilities.
So, for example, what does the export documentation employee do?
They prepare and verify all the crucial documents.
Making sure everything's correct.
And all the necessary information is included.
They're like the quality control specialists.
Making sure the paperwork is up to par.
What about supervisors and managers?
They review and approve the documentation.
Making sure everything aligns with regulation.
And they provide training to the documentation staff.
Keeping everyone's skills sharp.
And their knowledge up to date.
They're like the coaches of the team.
Making sure everyone's playing by the rules.
And Payvandi also recommends a dedicated quality control team.
To conduct periodic reviews of the export documents.
So they're like the referees.
Making sure everyone's playing fair.
I love that analogy.
The whole shipping process is a well-coordinated game.
And this SOP is the rule book.
It's a great example of how clear procedures and well-defined roles can make a huge difference.
In the efficiency and effectiveness of the entire operation.
It's like a well-oiled machine.
With all the parts working in sync.
To keep those shipments moving smoothly.
But even with these systems in place.
Sometimes you need to bypass the traditional BL process.
For the sake of speed and efficiency.
That's where the telex release comes in.
Ah, yes, the telex release.
We touched on this earlier.
But I'm ready to go deeper.
It's an electronic release of the cargo at the destination port.
Without physically handing over the original BL.
It's crucial for time-sensitive shipments.
Where every minute counts.
It's like sending a digital signal that unlocks the cargo.
But I imagine there are safeguards in place.
You're absolutely right. It's not just a quick email.
There's a whole process involved.
To ensure security, accuracy, and accountability.
So what are the essential steps in a successful telex release?
First, the shipper needs to surrender all original bills of lading to the shipping line at the port of loading.
That makes sense. To prevent any conflicts.
Then, the shipper submits a formal written request for a telex release.
What does that request include?
The BL number, vessel name, port of discharge, and the name of the party authorized to receive the cargo.
It's like a carefully crafted application.
Then the shipping line reviews the request.
They verify all the details.
Confirm that everything is in order.
Payments, surrender of the BLs, any other requirements.
Once they've given the green light,
What happens next?
they send a telex message or an electronic message.
Usually through a secure system like SWIFT, to their agent at the port of discharge. So it's a digital replica of the key information from the BL.
Shipper, consignee, cargo descriptions, dates, locations, special instructions.
And authorization for the release of the cargo.
The agent at the port of discharge then verifies everything.
Double checks for any errors.
And if everything's okay.
They release the cargo. It's a multi-step process.
That relies on clear communication and careful verification.
But are there any risks with telex releases?
There's always the risk of fraud.
If the telex release instructions are intercepted,
The cargo could be released to the wrong party.
yeah, it's a scary thought.
So security is paramount.
What can be done to mitigate that risk?
Secure communication channels like SWIFT are crucial
And robust verification procedures at both ends.
to ensure the instructions are authentic.
And what about accuracy?
Even a small typo can cause delays or rejection of the release.
Back to that attention to detail.
Double and triple check everything before sending that telex release message.
And have procedures in place for handling any corrections.
The telex release process is a perfect blend of speed, security, and precision,
It highlights the importance of adapting to the demands of international trade.
where speed and efficiency are crucial.
Speaking of crucial elements,
Remember those Incoterms we mentioned?
I'm still a bit hazy on what they actually are.
They're like a secret decoder ring for shipping contracts.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me.
Incoterms, short for International Commercial Terms.
Okay.
They're a set of standardized trade terms.
Published by the International Chamber of Commerce. So what do?
They define the responsibilities of the buyer and seller in an international transaction,
So they're like a universal rule book
making sure everyone's speaking the same language.
and playing by the same rules.
They cover who does what, when, and where in the shipping process.
That sounds important.
They cover things like transportation, insurance, customs clearance.
And determining when the risk of loss or damage passes from the seller to the buyer. So there are different Incoterms to choose from.
There are quite a few, but they're grouped into 4 main categories.
Tell me about them.
The E terms, like EXW, place the least responsibility on the seller.
In that scenario, the buyer handles everything.
Transportation, insurance, customs clearance.
From the seller's premises onward. It's like buyer beware.
Then there are the F terms, like FCA.
What do those involve?
The seller delivers the goods to a carrier named by the buyer.
At a specified location.
The seller loads the goods, but then the buyer takes over.
Okay, so the seller does a bit more, but the risk still transfers to the buyer early on.
Then you have the C terms, like CIF,
CIF, what does that stand for?
cost, insurance, and freight.
Okay,
The seller arranges and pays for the main carriage to the port of destination.
but the risk passes to the buyer once the goods are on board the vessel. So the seller handles more of the logistics, but the buyer still assumes the risk during the main journey.
And finally, the D terms, like DAP, delivered at place.
What does that mean?
The seller is responsible for delivering the goods to a named destination in the buyer's country.
And they cover most of the costs and risks. Wow, that's a big difference from the E terms.
Choosing the right Incoterm depends on a variety of factors.
The type of goods, the mode of transport, the countries involved, and the negotiating power of the buyer and seller. So it's a strategic decision.
You need to understand how they can impact the costs, risks, and responsibilities.
I'm starting to see why Payvandi dedicates a whole section to Incoterms.
They're a crucial part of international trade.
It's a lot of information to process
It can seem daunting, but remember, each document has a purpose.
and contributes to the smooth flow of goods.
Once you understand the logic, it becomes much easier.
It's like learning a new language.
Exactly, and understanding shipping documentation opens up a whole new world.
Are there any other documents or concepts we should explore?
Well, there's one more crucial element that often goes hand in hand with bills of lading,
Okay, what's that?
letters of credit.
I've heard the term, but I'm not entirely sure what they are.
Think of a letter of credit as a financial safety net.
For both the buyer and the seller,
It's a guarantee from the buyer's bank to the seller's bank,
promising that payment will be made,
as long as the seller meets the agreed upon terms,
including delivery of the goods. So it's like a promise backed by a bank.
adding an extra layer of security.
How does this relate to shipping documentation,
Letters of credit are often tied to the presentation of specific documents.
including the bill of lading?
The seller can't get paid until they provide the buyer's bank with the required documents.
Proving that the goods have been shipped. So the bill of lading is key.
Any discrepancies can lead to delays in payment or even rejection.
So it's like the key that unlocks the payment.
Exactly. It highlights the interconnectedness of shipping documentation and international finance.
The documents aren't just pieces of paper.
They represent a complex web of agreements and financial transactions.
It's amazing how it all fits together.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to learn.
About the different documents, the nuances of Incoterms, the complexities of letters of credit.
It's a lot to take in.
And it's a fascinating world.
I feel like I'm starting to understand the language of international shipping.
That's great to hear.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
What is it?
what advice would you give to someone who's new to this world?
Approach it with curiosity, a willingness to learn.
And attention to detail.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
And seek guidance from experienced professionals.
And use all the resources available.
Like Payvandi's book.
So it's about being proactive and seeking knowledge.
The world of shipping documentation might seem intimidating at first.
But with the right mindset, it can become a fascinating and rewarding journey.
It's not just about paperwork.
It's about understanding how global trade works.
That's a great perspective.
Let's take a quick break.
And when we return,
We'll explore some additional insights and resources.
stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive. We've covered bills of lading, telex releases,
Even touched on those Incoterms.
but there's always more to uncover.
Absolutely. Let's focus on practical insights
Something our listeners can really use.
to make sense of this complex world of shipping,
I like that approach, not just terminology.
but how these concepts actually work.
So let's revisit those Incoterms,
They're like the secret code for international transactions.
clarifying who's responsible for what.
We talked about the 4 main categories, but let's see them in action.
A real-world example.
Imagine a U.S. company exporting gadgets to Germany.
Okay, high-tech electronics crossing the Atlantic.
The choice of Incoterm will have a big impact.
On responsibilities and costs for both sides.
It's a strategic decision.
Let's say they agree on CIF, cost, insurance, and freight.
So the seller covers the costs to get those gadgets to the German port.
They handle transportation, insurance, and documentation.
Exactly.
What about the buyer?
They handle unloading, customs clearance, import duties, and transport to the final destination.
So the buyer still has work to do,
And the risk transfers to the buyer when the goods are on board the ship in the U.S.
even though the seller arranges the shipping and insurance.
That's right.
What if something happens during the voyage?
Like storm damage.
Yeah,
The buyer would file the insurance claim.
because they bear the risk from the point of loading?
What if they had chosen DIP, delivered at place?
How would that change things?
The seller would be responsible for delivering the goods to a specific place in Germany.
And they'd cover the costs and risks. That's a big difference.
It shows why choosing the right Incoterm is so important.
It's about finding the right balance.
Between responsibilities, costs, and risk.
Incoterms are the framework for a successful international trade relationship.
Absolutely.
It's a lot to learn.
But remember, this world is constantly evolving.
New regulations, new technologies.
Continuous learning is key.
There are resources out there to help you stay informed.
Books, courses, online communities.
Payvandi's book has been a great guide.
The journey doesn't end with mastering the documents
It's about understanding global commerce.
and appreciating how it all works.
It's like we've had a backstage pass to the world of global trade.
We've seen how it all comes together.
Well, listeners, we've reached the end of our deep dive into shipping documentation
We hope you've enjoyed the journey.
and feel more confident navigating international trade.
Stay curious. Keep learning.
Embrace the challenges and opportunities of global commerce. That's a wrap for today.